I knew something was wrong the second she said it. We were standing by the punch bowl, surrounded by laughter, the clinking of glasses, and music too loud for anyone to hear the truth in my wife's voice when she leaned closer to her friend and said, half laughing, "God, I wish I'd come alone. This would be way more fun." She didn't whisper it. She didn't care if I heard. For a second I stood frozen, cup halfway to my mouth, pretending I hadn't just heard my wife of 9 years make me sound like an anchor dragging behind her life raft of fun. But the way her friend smirked and gave me that look, the kind that says, "You poor thing," burned more than her words. I set the cup down, my hand trembling slightly. "You okay?" I asked her, trying to keep my voice even. "Relax, Michael," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's a joke." But I'd seen her jokes before. Too sharp, too deliberate, the kind meant to wound but still pass as harmless when called out. The party carried on. People dancing, couples laughing, the usual small talk blending into background noise, but my night had already ended. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. She hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on the door, completely unfazed. I stared at the road, my jaw clenched. "You're mad," she said finally. "No," I lied. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how you said you wished you'd come alone." She sighed, exasperated. "Michael, it was a joke. You overthink everything." Maybe I did. Maybe that was my problem. But something about her tone, her ease, it told me she'd rehearsed this kind of excuse before. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom, tossed her heels off and scrolled through her phone, grinning at whatever was on the screen. Probably memes. Or maybe text. I stood in the doorway, watching her laugh quietly at something I couldn't see, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like a guest in my own marriage. 2 weeks passed before I found the proof. It started with a name, Ethan. She mentioned him casually one night. "Oh, Ethan from work says we should all go hiking next weekend." I didn't think much of it. Until I noticed how her face lit up when she said his name. Then it was texts at odd hours. A new perfume. Extra care with her hair before leaving for late meetings. The signs were small, almost invisible, but once you start looking you can't stop. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was reading too much into it, but deep down I knew. One night I asked, "You seeing someone else?" She froze just for a heartbeat, then scoffed. "Are you serious? Michael, that's pathetic." Her anger was quick, too quick. Defensive. "Then show me your phone," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "You don't trust me?" I didn't answer. She held my gaze for a long second, then grabbed her keys and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the picture frame above the couch rattled. She didn't come home that night. At 3 a.m., I sat in the dark living room, staring at the faint glow of my phone, fighting every urge to call her. I finally did. Straight to voicemail. By morning I'd already decided. I needed the truth no matter how much it hurt. I called a private investigator. I felt ridiculous saying the words, like something out of a bad movie. But desperation makes you do things you'd once sworn you never would. The PI was quiet, efficient, and expensive. He called me 3 days later. "You might want to sit down for this." My stomach twisted. He sent photos, her car outside a restaurant, her hand on Ethan's arm, both of them laughing like the world was theirs alone. Another photo later that night, her head resting on his shoulder, his hand on her waist. Then one final picture. Her leaving his apartment the next morning, still wearing the same dress from the night before. My breath caught in my throat. I'd known it, but knowing is different from seeing. I didn't confront her right away. For 3 days I lived a lie, pretending everything was fine. I made her coffee, kissed her cheek, listened to her talk about work. It was torture. But I needed time to decide how I wanted it to end. And then fate handed me the perfect moment. Her company was hosting another party, and she asked me to come. "Are you sure?" I asked, feigning reluctance. "I don't want to ruin your fun." She laughed, not catching the edge in my voice. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic." So I went. The venue was upscale. A rooftop with city lights twinkling below, music drifting through the cool air. People mingled, glasses clinked, and my wife floated from group to group, radiant and untouchable. Then I saw him, Ethan. Tall, confident, smiling like he owned the room. When their eyes met there was a flicker, something quick, intimate, undeniable. And in that moment everything fell into place. She wasn't even trying to hide it. Later, when the drinks had loosened tongues and she was laughing too loud, she turned to her friend again, the same one from the last party, and said, "Honestly, I wish I'd come alone. It'd be way more fun without my husband hovering." There it was again. That same cruel line. But this time I smiled. I leaned close to her ear and said quietly, "You know what, Emily? You're right." She blinked confused. "What?" "I'll grant your wish." Before she could respond, I set my glass down and walked away. Out of the party. Out of the building. Out of us. She didn't call that night. Not the next morning either. By the time she finally showed up at home, suitcase in hand, I'd already packed mine. "Where are you going?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "Giving you what you wanted," I said calmly. "Freedom. Space. Fun. Whatever you call it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Michael, it wasn't." "Don't." I held up a hand. "You made your choice. You just thought I'd never make mine." She tried to follow me to the door, pleading, promising, crying. But I'd already stopped listening. Because once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. That night, I checked into a small motel on the edge of town. I lay on the stiff mattress staring at the ceiling, numb. 9 years. Gone. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she'd made me question my own sanity, my worth. I replayed every laugh, every kiss, every late-night whisper, trying to figure out when it all had started to rot. Maybe it had been years ago. Maybe I'd been clinging to a ghost long before she ever met Ethan. And yet, somewhere beneath all that anger and heartbreak, a strange sense of calm began to settle in. Because the truth, as brutal as it was, had finally set me free. A month later I filed for divorce. Emily didn't fight it. She cried in court, said she regretted everything. Maybe she did. Maybe she just regretted getting caught. I didn't stay to find out. When the papers were signed, I walked outside breathing in the sharp winter air. And for the first time in years it didn't feel heavy. I looked up at the sky and thought about that night at the party. Her words, her sneer, the way she said she wished she'd come alone. Funny thing was, so did I. Because in the end, walking away alone was the first time in a long time I felt like myself again.